Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and welcome to Wasteland Talks, my weekly talk show where I talk about whatever the hell I want. Because this is kind of my opportunity to expand my horizons here. And this is going to be my first episode called Gaming Classics, where I talk a little bit about a classic video game. And I have my friend here, Dave, who is a big gamer. We actually spent a lot of time in college in the Art of Gaming Club, so very fitting. Dave, thanks for coming on.
Happy to be here, Shane. Thanks for having
me. Of course. And I'm sure Dave at some point will talk movies on here, but now we've talked baseball. Now we're going to talk some gaming. Be interesting to go back and look at our baseball video and see how that's treating us so far now that we're 2 months into the season. But tonight we're going to be talking about probably the most obscure game that we're probably going to talk about on this show, because I have an idea of a couple other games I want to talk about, mostly from the ones that are sitting right in front of me with my GameCube, because I, after 21 years, still have my GameCube as my primary gaming system. I do have a Switch, though. And that is Yu-Gi-Oh! Falsebound Kingdom. And so what is Yu-Gi-Oh! Falsebound Kingdom? So this is not your traditional, actually, like, dueling engine type game. It's not about us creating a deck and dueling each other. They decided that, kind of a la a couple of the seasons of the show. There we go. Dave has it right there. I have mine sitting over there. Dave, what were the cards with it? Was the one with Zoa and Metal Zoa, or am I thinking a different game?
Yes, it was Metal Zoa, and Goblin Fan.
Oh my god. So there you go. I remember getting Metal Zoa and being like, this is not helpful. Because, like, actually at that point in the meta game, it's like, this isn't really helpful. It is a giant tank, though, in the actual, like, Falsebound Kingdom game. Once you get it. Zoe is one of the last characters I think you can get, depending on whose storyline you start off with. And then got to find that, Metal Coat. But anyway, before I get ahead of myself, so instead of dueling, kind of like one particular season of the show, Yugi and all of his friends and Kaiba and his brother get teleported into a virtual reality game. And there, it's basically a combination of an RTS, real-time strategy board kind of setup, and then a turn-based strategy, actually, like, fighting mechanism out of, like, a RPG. And you combine all these crazy things with dual monsters and kingdoms and being able to fight a whole bunch of people. And this game has 3 storylines in it. One, you have Yugi's, obviously. You have Kaiba's, because, they both have to have their own because, longtime rivals in the show. And then once you beat both of them, you unlock Joey Wheeler's storyline, which is like half as long. And you get Joey Wheeler, who inexplicably has a Brooklyn accent in the middle of Japan. But we're not going to talk about that. So this game came out, I think it was 2002. So this game's been out 20 years at this point. And I have played this game so many times to the point that my brother even made a Boromir meme because of it. And it says, one does not simply get all of your dual monsters up to level 99. I'm like, I have multiple times, because that's a thing. And we'll get into that about the difficulty of this game. But Dave, what's your experience with the game?
Well, it has been a while, but I do remember being very excited to play something obviously based on a card game and TV show we were all very obsessed with.
Yep.
And this being, something with more RPG elements in it was something really up my alley. So I thought that was pretty exciting. going in, I wasn't really quite sure what to expect out of it because it's a lot different from any other kind of Yu-Gi-Oh game. They were definitely taking a big risk, I would say, because they never did anything even close to that at the time or even since then. I don't think there's any other game, at least in the franchise, you can really compare it to.
Mhm.
But I will say, if you are a fan of Yu-Gi-Oh, there are definitely a lot of elements to enjoy. The characters are there, all of the monsters are there. So even though you're getting into a much different experience than you might have with the show or playing with the cards in real life, I think if you're a fan of those, it's definitely going to add a lot to your enjoyment of the game.
Mhm. Yeah, I think a big part of the enjoyment is like, oh my God, I get to play with all these duel monsters and these characters. Because like Yugi's campaign, you have Yugi, obviously, you have Shimon and Fizdiz are the two characters that like introduce themselves to you, which is hilarious because they incorporate them into the last season of the show. Because when Yugi gets like blasted into like ancient Egypt, his grandpa is Shimon. I'm like, wait a minute. But like you also get, let's see, the rest of Yugi's campaign is like Taya's there, Tristan's there, Joey's there, my Valentine is there. Uh it was Esperoba was on Yugi's. I'm pretty sure. Mako Tsunami.
Mhm.
And I'm trying to think. I feel like there was some other ones on his. I do remember Kaiba's. He had like Rex Raptor and Weevil Underwood, and she's Ishtar, because of course you need to bring her in, and she kind of introduces like, hey, because there's only 3 usable characters in this game that could actually use Egyptian god monsters, and boy are they OP when you pull them out. Oh my god. But you have all these different characters and you have all the monsters, and I feel like some of the big ones, like there's a mechanism in this game that is really overpowered, is when they're with a certain combination of monsters, they could do a tag team move, and they are ridiculous. Dark Magician and Dark Magician Girl, or Magician of Black Chaos and Dark Magician Girl, Dark Burning Magic or whatever the hell they do together, is
Yep.
ridiculous.
It
Ridiculous.
can like wipe out a whole team.
The only thing more ridiculous is Triangle Ecstasy Spark or whatever it was, when you have all 3 Harpy Lady sisters. Oh my
Yep.
god, ridiculous. And some of the dual monsters in this are just ridiculously overpowered. So how the mechanism works battling is it's turn based, and you have action points each of your dual monsters, and once you're at an action point, you're done. You use up 2 action points for a tag team move. You use up 1 for a regular attack, or to go into defense, or like use items and stuff like that. Black Luster Soldier is one of the most powerful monsters in the whole game and has the most absurd amount of action points. If you have that on your team, because how you get that is use Black Luster Ritual on Gaia, the Fierce Knight, and it's just OP as hell. And you buy those items from the encampments that you find and stuff. Sometimes you have to build like what's called a trade union to open up a shop and stuff like that. Here's the thing. If you have a lot of experience with this game becomes ridiculously easy. Because if you know what you're doing and you buy power up items, because there's power up items for basically every type of monster except for dragons, like permanent power up items. So like they have legendary sword for warriors. They have um trying to think. There's beasts which encompass a whole bunch of things, like the insects or beasts and stuff. They have beast fang. If you buy those items and just keep powering the dual monsters up, they're ridiculously overpowered anyway. So I guess before I get ahead of myself, Dave, what are some of the things that you enjoy about the game?
For one thing, kind of going off that point of, it really plays into people that are like already enjoyed Yu-Gi-Oh as a franchise going in. There's a lot to like there. I think one of the things I thought was kind of like a neat little feature was each of the monsters starts out with the same stats that the actual cards do.
Mm-hmm.
So like their attack and defense starts out the same. So that kind of gives you a better idea going in when you get a new monster, just how strong it is.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that they did that little tie-in. I think there's not like a ton of strategy to the game, but the amount that is there, I do like. It does kind of play out as like a real-time strategy game in that you move the teams around a map in real time. And,
In real time. We'll get
we'll
to that
speak on
though.
that more. But, being able to kind of have the freedom to tell your groups where to go and kind of plan out what they're going to do. And also, at your bases, you could kind of build up different fortifications, I guess you would call them, on the castles and forts that you have. So like you could prepare, what was it, like catapult turtle?
You have catapult turtle and whatever giant golem with like a cannon on his back is.
Yep. So like if the enemy had like tried to attack you, the defenses would help protect you.
Yeah.
And then likewise, the enemy could have them on their castle. So you'd have to kind of think about what team to send in what order. So,
it
did require
overpowered. Because they only had ground and flying covered because there's 3 types of movement. Swimming. Swimming doesn't get hit by any of them. Make a tsunami just like boop, 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 boop.
And I will say that, I mean, maybe it hasn't aged super well graphically, but at the time it was really cool, like seeing the character models in 3D, and like each of them had their own unique attack animations.
Yeah.
So like I never got tired of seeing that. I mean, there wasn't like, at least especially in the early game, like the battles were pretty basic. You just take turns wailing on each other, but
yeah,
like I never got bored seeing the attack animations. I just thought it looked super cool.
Yeah, that's true. They did put in a lot of effort into making each of the duel monsters unique. Some of the things I enjoy, because like, I guess let's kind of go through like story-wise. It's like you could just quick click through the whole entire thing and not understand story, except for like there's a couple of actual maps where it's like each map you win by just defeating the other team's main castle or the main opponent. But there are some of the maps that are more challenging because of certain setups. And I think in general, this game is not hard. Like I imagine for a kid, this might be more challenging, but like as an adult, this becomes less and less a strategy game because one of my biggest complaints about it is the AI is stupid. Like the AI could easily take you out and then make the dumbest, it'll defend. It's just like you could have just knocked out my duel monster and beat me. But you did it because you're stupid. And it feels like it just randomly picked an option. I also think that this game would benefit from being able to change difficulty levels. Because like it's one set difficulty and it feels like it's stuck on easy. Except for a couple of maps. And I don't know if you remember these specific maps, but like I've played this so many times. When you get introduced to Taya, she's in the middle of the map. And if Taya dies, you lose that map. And she's being attacked by 7 different like rare hunters chasing after her. And basically you can try to run away. But the thing is, if you run away from a battle, you lose the battle, and then you're frozen for a couple of seconds. And not gonna lie, Taya's team's not the strongest at the beginning. And the tricky thing is if you want to replay the game, because you can keep going through the different storylines and tracks, if you don't beef her dual monsters up, the next time you come back around to Yugi's storyline, she's gonna be so under leveled, you're just gonna get demolished, and you're not gonna be able to beat the map. And it's just like, what the hell am I supposed to do now? She does have Dancing Elf, I think it is, and it can blind the whole other team, which is pretty cool. Like, that's helpful. And that makes it easier to win battles, but like you have to get to a certain level to unlock those abilities. And that's the thing. Some of them you have to get to certain levels to unlock special abilities. I enjoy like the basic setup of the game. I think it's a pretty clever idea of what they did mashing it all together. But some of the things just don't work. Like, it's way too slow.
Yep.
Unless you have like, there's specific characters like Unsatsu, who's a ninja who like runs basically across the map, or the flying ones generally, like the harpies, they move very quickly. Also, another challenge, there's one map where Bakura, forgot Bakura, becomes evil Bakura. And there's one, you have to race him to a particular fort. And if you don't have like a Harpy Lady team or Ensatsu, you're effed. You won't make it to that camp in time, and then you're just screwed and you lose the campaign. You're just like, what the hell am I supposed to do with this? And his stupid pumpkin just walking across like the map. Because that's the thing, all the characters have their own unique movement across the maps too, which is interesting that they put a lot of detail into that. And I think I agree, it's appreciated for like fans. But yeah, it runs too slow. They should add like speed up options.
Yeah. If they could have just mapped that to like a control pad or something where you could like set a fast forward function. And I don't think it would have been that hard to implement. Or even if they didn't have that, if they just had set like the base movement speed for each character to be significantly higher. I mean, if we're like real talk, they move really slow. And, that's just, it's not good game design where a lot of your time spent is just sitting there watching them move. Like a lot of RTS games, like there's so much happening at such a fast pace. There's always something you could be doing. And like, I'm not saying it has to be at that level of breakneck speed. I mean, this isn't trying to be a hardcore RTS. It's supposed to be more approachable, but there shouldn't be that much dead time in between activity. Like you can only spend so much time building up your base or watching your units, checking their status, and then, you're just watching them slowly make their way across a field from point A to point B.
I'm demonstrating any of the swimming dual monsters. I remember when you get Mako with Kairushin, that big like sea snake thing, that is literally, it just keeps like I'm just like,
did they move faster when they were in water?
No.
It was just always that slow.
Yeah, that would be even better. They do get a power boost when they're over water, but like,
okay, that's what it was.
And one of the things I did like was the collecting of dual monsters, because on most maps, there's like hidden ones to find.
That was fun.
Screw Moisture Creature and whatever noise you had to do to get that. Not gonna lie, I bought the strategy guide when I got this game, and I would definitely not have gotten this good at this game without that strategy guide, which, by the way, if I was reviewing the strategy guide, I had to make edits, my own edits into it, because they were wrong a handful of times. And game facts, honestly, was the main reason I got so good at this game. But you had to literally send Kaiba specifically off into the desert, into the mountains, to this one camp. You had to put a anti-air cannon and a watchtower to double its distance. And you had to put Kaiba out on the line that appears, and you had to sit and wait until moisture creature showed up.
Like, how would anyone know that without a guide?
No, they wouldn't. Impossible. And a lot of the other ones are easier to find, but like I can't imagine getting all these duel monsters just randomly looking. Because some of them are really obscure, like some of them are like off into like random mountains on the map or completely out of the way. So like
some of them were like either in a fort or like exactly on the path you would set between two forts, so you would easily run into them. But others, it was like there's no way you would ever go to that part of the map unless you specifically knew something was there, which you wouldn't without a guide, because there's nothing on the map to say, oh, you should look in this spot, something cool's over here.
Yeah, because you have Yugi's first campaign, you get Silver Fang. If you go from his camp to the main camp right away, it's right there. It's in the path. And Silver Fang's a pretty good one early on in the game to have. One of the most annoying ones too was, I forget the other two dual monsters, but Larva Moth was in it. So Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth is one of the most powerful dual monsters you could get in this game. And Larva Moth was so hard to get because it was on a time-restricted map where Kaiba is in a deep, dark forest and has 3 flying grunts, more or less, chasing after you, and Banded Keith and his barrel dragon coming at you. And you had to send out your quickest team. And not only did that team have to be quick, but they had to be able to beat 3 dual monsters. And you had to send it out into the woods, avoiding all the enemies and getting out to this very specific part in the woods before they reached you and you beat them. I'm just like, there's just so many things. But some of the unlockable characters are so important. Like, if you don't get like Dark Magician and Dark Magician Girl in Yugi's, you're making life a lot harder for you. And like the main villain in this game is like, it's Scott, who used to work for Kaiba, who then is possessed by this dark spirit. I'm pretty sure they even call it Dark Spirit at one point. And you fight Egyptian gods. Like, those fights are annoying. And basically, you just have to keep chipping away with all of your teams. And they're really overpowered. But once you get them, you can just barrel through any of these campaigns, honestly. And the thing is, if you beat a campaign multiple times, you get multiple summoning items for them. Like, you could get 3, 4, 5 Soul of Obelisks and just be able to keep summoning it, and it's crazy. So like, that's the thing. Upon replay, this game gets super easy, which is also why like this gets too easy after a while, and is also why I was able to get all my dual monsters up to level 99. And that's the thing. I know so many times I've been playing this game where I was watching something on the TV, because like half the time this game is just walking around and waiting to get to maps, like camps and stuff like that. Here's the thing. I love the concept of this game. I had tons of fun playing this. I definitely understand the horrible ratings that people have given this game. Because like, if you're just a casual gamer and don't want to, like, aren't into Yu-Gi-Oh, I don't know why you would play this game, to be honest. So, Dave, if they made a sequel or remastered this, what would you want to see in it?
Well, obviously, first thing would be to increase the speed of the game. That's a given. Second, if they were to add like new content, they could definitely add like characters and monsters from other parts of the show, maybe some of the new summoning mechanics that are part of the game as well, such as synchro summoning. Maybe just implement more parts of the game in general. There was definitely a strong focus on the monsters. If there was some way to use more of like the spell and trap cards from the game, I'm sure that could add some layers to it as well. Graphically, like I said, I think back at the time it looked pretty good, honestly. I liked it back then. If they could, have a similar kind of approach, just in HD, I think that would be perfectly fine. They definitely did a good job with what they had with the technology at the time, with the character models and animations. And I guess for the story too, if they could, maybe they would try to implement more of the characters from the show. And also, I honestly can't remember a whole ton from the story, which is, I guess that's not a good sign.
Yeah, basically Yugi arrives and is a rebel against Emperor Heishin, who runs this whole entire kingdom, and Kaiba is Heishin's like lead marshal. So and then of course they collide with each other. And like halfway through you find out that Emperor Heishin's just a pawn for Scott. And then, Scott's messing with you for half of it. And then you chase Scott across the map and you finally find him in you get dropped in this mechanized virtual world. You're inside a computer. And that's the climax of the game. And you're fighting. I remember the first virtual world map is the main bosses, Sangha, Suijin, and Kaizijin, and you actually can potentially fight Gate Guardian, which is pretty crazy because they do have fusion monsters in this. So you could use fusions and polymerization. So you could have Guy the Dragon Champion, Twin-Headed Thunder Dragon. Oddly enough, they make one fusion monster, Twin-Headed King Rex, as just a regular monster instead of a fusion. They just make it a main dual monster for Rex Raptor. But you have fusions, and then the ritual summons are just an item. So if you use it once, they're automatically changed into that dual monster. So you could use that for, you get Black Luster Soldier, you get Magician of Black Chaos. I'm trying to think of Call the Dead. You change Zenki into Armored Zombie and Crawling Dragon into Zombie Dragon. Zenki's ridiculous because they have status changes in this, and Armored Zombie for some reason can paralyze you. And it's really powerful too, and has tons of action points. So I think it would be cool to add some of the new mechanics. Synchro and Exceed monsters and stuff like that would be pretty interesting. And definitely complicate the game. My biggest thing is 100% agree with the speeding up. If you could adjust that, that'd be great. I definitely think adding a difficulty levels, especially if they hone in on the AI intelligence and make them smarter. Because if they were smarter, this game wouldn't be such a pushover game. And to me, honestly, if they made a sequel to this, it'd just make, to be fair, I don't even care about the story. And to me personally, just make more maps with more dual monsters and just give you an infinite more amount of gameplay. Because for you to actually get everything in this game, a long time. Hours upon hours upon hours to get everything. So I think it'd be pretty interesting. And obviously with updated graphics would be really cool because I think you can make these maps look really interesting. Because most of the time they're very generic looking. It's look, you're in a forest. Look, you're on plains. Look, you're there's very few of them that look like make them stand out kind of thing. But in general, this is an interesting game. I think this was a bold, interesting idea for Konami and what they were doing with Yu-Gi-Oh at the time. Because to be fair, I think the only other two games that I've ever played that were Yu-Gi-Oh games, gaming wise, were one, Duel of the Roses, which really is like playing the card game, and Dungeon Dice Monsters, which that was different, obviously too. Oh, they rode high off of that one episode of the show.
Yeah, I remember like you could buy like the physical board game and all the little pieces.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. One kid had that in fifth grade, and I had a broken ankle at that point at the end of fifth grade, and he let me play it while we're at like recess because I couldn't play anything because I had a cast. So on my legs, I was just sitting there playing Dungeon Dice Monsters. But Dave, do you have any other thoughts on Falsebound Kingdom?
Not that I'm thinking about it, going on your idea that the game was pretty unbalanced and that, it could get really easy at times and a difficulty mode might help. I think too, if they kind of just look at, the stats of the monsters plus what they're capable of doing in battle, like maybe if there was more options, like especially in the early game, you can pretty much just like attack or defend. There wasn't, I mean, you could use items too, but
at that point, you barely had any.
Yeah.
So and you had no money to buy any.
It was really basic. And then, all of a sudden, like later in the game, it just feels like you unlock a couple of special attacks and suddenly your whole team is way too overpowered. So I feel like if they could find some kind of middle ground or at least make it so you're much more gradually going from, just those basic battles to having these much stronger attacks, just to kind of, let the game play out. And then, that might be a good way to kind of make the game more enjoyable, or if you kind of show more and more things that you can do one at a time, like with tutorials or something like that, just so like with each new battle you get into, you find some new aspect of the game you didn't know about before that makes it more approachable. Because, I think you pretty quickly, like at the beginning of the game, know what you're getting into. Like a lot of like what you see at the beginning, that's what you're going to see the whole rest of the game.
Yeah.
Aside from, you run into some really big monsters, you get some on your team, you get those special attacks, but apart from that stuff, I feel like they probably could have added some more in between just to kind of flesh out the gameplay and just have a little bit more for the player to do and consider as an option.
Yeah, I got to the point where I challenged myself. Like on playthroughs, it'd be like, I have one team and I just stack them with whatever dual monsters I'm trying to get to level 99 and see how far in the campaign I could just go with one team.
Yeah,
depending on the team, you could probably win the whole entire campaign with just the one. And the campaigns are very unbalanced too, because there's some of them where it's just ridiculous amount of enemies, and some of them there's like 3. Like some of these campaigns you could beat in like, and if it weren't for how slow you moved, you probably could beat it in 5 minutes. But then you're just like,
that's the biggest reason the game takes as long as it does to beat, more than anything else.
It is literally just waiting. Tom Petty was right. The waiting is the hardest part. Oh, Tom Petty. But those are our thoughts on Yu-Gi-Oh! Falsebound Kingdom, which is indeed a real game. Because I know many of you probably had never heard of it. Some of the games I would definitely like to talk about in the future, Dave and I are going to gush over the greatest baseball game ever created, MVP Baseball 2005. I would love to talk about Super Smash Brothers Melee and Lord of the Rings: The Third Age. So like those are really the games I always used to play for the GameCube. And then obviously we get into some like real classics. So, like, let's be real here. Yu-Gi-Oh! Falsebound Kingdom is not a real classic video game. We could talk about, like, Super Mario 64 and, you know, like, Crash Bandicoot and some, like, Mario Kart and all the ones that, like, actually have been, like, beloved for years. And not just an obscure game that both of us know about, that I'm pretty sure, like, we're, like, a good 60% and good 40% of the people that play this game, as in five people play this game. But Dave, thanks for coming on, chatting some gaming with me.
Anytime. Always a pleasure.
And thank all of you for tuning in and always supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.